Hi guys, welcome back to the Breakdown a Rugby podcast. We are back today with a different sort of video. We're going to be doing our hot takes for the first time on YouTube. We've got a lot to get through today, so Rohan, why don't you start us off?
Well, for me, my hot take is that obviously Jonathan Joseph's retired. I had a little look back at his career, and what I've seen is that he's basically Lukanyo Am before Lukanyo Am. And we're happy to celebrate these players like Lukanyo Am now. And fair enough, he's a very good player, but I don't feel like Jonathan Joseph had the same recognition when for me they were the same sort of player.
Uh, I,
Listen, you're basing Jonathan Joseph scoring 3 tries against Scotland and won Six Nations as being one of the best 13s in the world. Come on.
It's not that, it's the play style and the way they played and what they offered for their team is very similar to each other.
all,
I
all of,
he,
I think defensively, Lukanyo Am wipes the floor with Jonathan Joseph. I'm not saying he's a bad defender. I think defensively, Lukanyo Am, the way he reads the game, he's a different gravy. I think you're looking at a player, right, that played 2 international games of rugby last year, got injured, and was still nominated for World Player of the Year. So for me, I can't really allow this to be a conversation. Jonathan Joseph is, would you even say he's one of the best England 13s of all time? Because I personally wouldn't. I don't think he is. I think Ollie Lawrence is on his way
can you
to be
can
better.
you can you even name another 13 that's played for England? No, exactly.
There you go then. But here's my point is you brought up about Lukanyo Am's defense, and for me that's the main reason why I'm comparing them. If you watch how Jonathan Joseph has shut down overlaps and been able to make the right read and make the right tackle, like he is very similar to what Lukanyo Am does. If
But
anything, I
Jonathan,
think he probably makes more tackles a game than
I,
Lukanyo
I,
Am in his.
I would say no. I
My,
would say that Jonathan Joseph. I would say that Jonathan Joseph runs a better line than Kanye Am does.
but it's the
And,
play style, isn't it?
and this is something that isn't up for debate in terms of attacking threat. Prime Joseph is more dangerous than
Yeah.
Lukanyo Am.
Because he's allowed to be more dangerous. But like, watch that second test versus New Zealand last year with Lukanyo Am. Probably I've never seen even a Brian O'Driscoll perform the way Am did against that in that second test against New Zealand. And from an attacking perspective, I do have to agree that overly, right? I think Jonathan Joseph was allowed to shine more. That England team, especially when you had I think forward at 10, really opened up the game a lot for him. But yeah, would you ever say though in his career, Jonathan Joseph was a top 3 13 in the world
Yeah,
internationally?
100%.
2016,
Yeah,
2016 was his year. 2016,
yeah.
17.
And not to mention as well, the first 2 years for Eddie Jones, I think Jonathan Joseph, I don't think he missed a game for one, and he was the top try scorer as a 13, which is quite impressive. So he is, and also if you look at his tries in those time periods, they all come from his defensive reads, his ability to get an intercept or something like that, or make a good read and turn the ball over. So there is a lot of Lukanyo Am and Jonathan Joseph.
My hot take is that Georgia and Fiji have a massive chance of getting out of Pool D.
I do not think right now there's a clear cut team qualifying because you have to think about. I know people. Even I was on the bandwagon saying that Eddie Jones makes a difference, right? And like he's gonna change. He's gonna change Australia. But you have to look at it and say, if Australia come dead last in the rugby championship, have 3 warm-up games, is that enough form to go into the World Cup and convincingly even go and beat a Wales? Remember,
I,
if
I, I think Georgia are going to fly under the radar, like we've seen a lot of other teams have. I think Australia on a secured win for that pool.
not all.
Fiji can cause an upset of any kind of power game they have. And then you look at Wales, they're abysmal. Like they are just awful. So they could lose to every single one of their team in that pool. It's all up for. I reckon this could be one of the most exciting pools in the tournament.
For me, I don't see Georgia challenging. I think even though they beat Wales recently, I think Wales will find a way to overcome Georgia. And I'm not saying it will be an easy game for Wales at all. I think the problems will mainly come from Fiji for me.
I think Fiji. The reason why Fiji are so dangerous because you can sit down as an analysis, right, and watch every single system that every team plays in the world, Ireland, France, and know how to stop it. With Fiji, how do you stop pure Fijian power? You can't offload
Yeah,
time.
and
You
and
cannot
most of
stop
what
time.
they attack, well, most of their attacks are sort of just improvised off the cuff. So it's very hard to look at them and say this is how we're going to beat them when they can attack in so many different ways. They've got the power game, they've got fast backs, and I hope come World Cup time they'll have their halfbacks at a level where they can take control of the game as
I
well.
I think Australia and Fiji are going to make out the pool. I don't think Wales are going to make out.
You know what the biggest issue for Fiji is though is it's a competent forward pack. You look at that back line; it's been world class. I think 2019 had a world class. You had prime Tuasova. Tuasova is obviously still a baller, but he's not in his prime anymore. But you're looking at that back line now, you've got players like Verdrada, players like Tuasova in there. And if they only played behind a decent pack, they would probably be a top.
Mate, if they
yeah.
Do you realise that Fiji could play Boschia at 12 and then Radradra at 13?
Jesus, that might be the best.
And then you play outside of that, and then you've got Josh Tuasova, and you can play Ben Volavola or whatever his name is. So this team, and then you've got Albert Tuasui that played for Northampton for the whole season, who'd been balling out. This is a little
team. They've got a team actually. It's just like that centre combination with Botti and Radradra. What are we ranking that in the world? I think you have to take yourself. I think Tui Palatu and Hugh Jones go criminally underrated. Irish centre combination obviously is there. English, I'm not too sold on. South Africa, New Zealand, but where are we ranking that Fiji centre?
I don't know, but because for me, if I was Fiji, I'd put Boschia in the forwards to sort of get the forward pack going, and then you've got so many centres. You've got Botito, I think his name is. He can play 12. Then you've got Nayaka Levu, and then you've got Radradra as well. So there's so many options in the centres that Boschia might as well be a back rower.
Basically, to put it bluntly, Wales and Georgia are in the mud, and possibly Australia if they don't turn up at the World Cup.
I wouldn't put Australia in the mud. I'd say that they're still comfortably first for me.
No, not You can't. What justification do you give for a team being comfortably first when they've lost 4? When they're probably going to lose, let's say, 3 games in a row going into the World Cup against South Africa, New Zealand, and Argentina. And this is an Argentina team that got smoked by New Zealand by 50 points. So I'm not like, come on.
Australia, for me, they've been playing World Cup contenders so far this tournament, and they will be. They'll be playing New Zealand next. So it's easy to look at them and say, yeah, okay, they're not doing very well. But actually, the quality of opposition they've played is nothing like the quality of opposition in their pool stage. Their pool stage is going to be a lot easier.
One more take. Obviously, Stuart Hogg retired, I think, this week. Is Stuart Hogg, in your opinion, a top 10 European player of all time? Does he make in that conversation with the O'Driscolls, the Wilkinsons? For me, he's not top 10 of all time. That's not a conversation. Is he a top?
Maybe not top 10. I think maybe top 10 is a bit of a far stretch. He's an excellent player. His legacy, his longevity is something to admire. But is he in that top 10 conversation? No. Does he have an attribute that stands him out for every other player? No. I don't think he does.
So European player, I would have to sit down and go through this, but obviously you've got like your DuPonts, your Wilkinsons, Johnsons, Delalios, all of that. Welsh wise, you've got, there's a lot of good options in terms of Welsh. Scotland, he's definitely one of the best Scottish players of all time. Yeah. And I'd say he's probably a top 10 fullback of all time as well. But top 10 European players.
I don't think Stuart Hogg goes past Chris Patterson, if I'm honest.
Wow, that's a bit harsh. That's very harsh. I think he's the top 10 fullback of all time, I would say.
No, bro. Top 10 fullback is a bit crazy because I think for top 10, you're looking at like Rob Kearney. You're looking at
Rob Kearney was not better than Hogg.
Are you
serious? Rob Kearney was not better than Hogg. I promise you, he was not.
Rohan.
I promise you.
No, Kieran.
Do you know what the problem is? Yeah, I think you guys remember him as the player that he was for the last 2-3 years of his career. No. When realistically, Taddy, how many team like players do you know that play for a team that's underperforming like Scotland and gets back-to-back players of the Six Nations? How many players do you know that can do that?
Rohan, it's the same argument we have for the Finn Russell debate. We always say, what has he won apart from a Calcutta Cup?
You can't win anything in the Scotland when he was in his prime, the Scotland team he was in, you can't win anything. So he won individual awards, which shows the fact that he's playing in an underperforming team.
Bro, he's a class player. Listen, he's a class player, and yes, he's got an absolute boot on him. But there's not an attribute that I think he is the best in the world in. I just don't.
Yeah, but you don't have to have an attribute that you're the best in the world in to be one of the best players. The fact is,
Dan Carter off both boots because slot a kick. Dupont can pass off both hands. He's got two left. He's got 2 bloody right feet. He is world class attributes that separate them. Stuart Hogg is not that. Sorry, he's not.
Okay, I'll tell you what Stuart Hogg had. He had probably as a fullback the longest distance kicking wise. One of the best kicking games as a fullback.
In a period where he didn't have to kick that much.
In terms of distribution, he was one of the best fullbacks. In terms of footwork, he was one of the best fullbacks. and his running game overall was probably the best, other than maybe a Falau or a
Oh Jesus, this is a hot.
Rohan. All I'm gonna say is your take, right? You know it's bad when I'm like vehemently defending Carney here. To say that Stuart Hogg is better than Rob Carney, who went to South Africa in 2009, had probably one of the best individual performances of all time against the world champions, right? Stuart Hogg's never done that in his career. Rob Carney is a legend of the game.
All right. Well, look at what Stuart Hogg did against New Zealand 2017, and you'll disagree.
Well, he didn't pat. He threw the ball into touch in the last minute, gave away possession, and Scotland lost. That's what I'm taking away from
They wouldn't have had that opportunity in the first place if it wasn't for him. What he did against New Zealand in 2017 is very, very similar to what Rob Carney did in 2000.
Rob Carney won.
But did they win?
This is what I'm talking about. It's a difference between an Ireland team and a Scotland team. And I think in terms of individual awards, Stuart Hogg has more than Rob Carney has.
I can't believe not even the disrespect for Carney, but the lack of knowledge of how good Rob Carney was is just ridiculous.
I'm not saying Rob Carney was a bad player. We all know he was one of the best.
Rohan, Rob Carney is clear of Rob Carney is arguably, you could say, a top 3 fullback of all time, top 4, top 5.
No.
Yes, you could.
That's no, he's nowhere near that.